Hello and welcome to Sovereign RPG. I am Sovereign and today I'm going to teach you the best leveling build for your Blood Mage slash Bone Mage, as I'm calling it, as we're going to be focusing on two main abilities. Bone Storm, which has a load of bones appear above your character and fires forward in a straight line. Does massive damage and is really good for single target when you're fighting bosses. And the second ability we focus on is Bone Cage. Now this is great CC, great AoE damage, and it poisons enemies, which actually ticks as chaos damage. So it does help if we have some chaos in there as well. We're not going to be using many other abilities, and we're going to be focusing on going towards the end game, playing something a little different that isn't minions, as most people are playing minion builds right now. I know there's people out there that love some Blood Mage and love some of these bone abilities. And with the help of some supports, it doesn't just do a single, you spell cascade it out to do multiple of these bone things. It does CC, it stops most melee in their tracks, and it can also pin bosses down and it causes them to bleed. Now this leveling build will go act by act, and I'll do a video for every time we complete an act and what I did and what spells I put on and what supports I used in each of them and itemization as we're going, so you can go and build along with me. Make sure to like the video if you do enjoy my content and you do find it useful. Let's get into the build itself. When you're first starting out, you're only going to have Chaos Bolt. Now you don't have to put any supports in this because at the early levels we may not have it. Now some of you may be restarting after getting bored of a character, or your character got tanked and you want to try something different. You may have some supports in. I'll only be talking about the most important supports as you pick the support gems up. So don't worry, we're not going to talk about how I've used all of the support gems from my previous characters. So when you first start out, you're going to be wanting using Chaos Bolt. Now Chaos Bolt is just a single target. You can, if you get a support gem, stick a support gem in there to split it with Scatter Shot, which turns that singular Chaos Bolt into two Chaos Bolts. Now we have Skeletal Warrior, which is just going to be used from our Bone Rattling Scepter, which allows us to summon two Skeletal Warrior minions. This is not a minion build, however, in the early stages, the Skeletal Warriors are very good to help tank some of that damage for you. As you progress through Act 1 at the early stages, at level 4, you can unlock this ability, Bone Cage. Now, Bone Cage is massively strong in the early acts, and it actually gets stronger as time goes on. Now, for the focus support gems in the Bone Cage, we have Spell Cascade, which actually drops the amount of air effect and drops the damage on it, which you don't have to use this. I like to use this as it gives more AoE potential, as it does drop the amount of the main one, but it does shoot out in different directions, so you can get those pins out in a further circle, as it only does pins from the actual animation. And we have Envenom, which gives a 60% chance to poison on hit every time this hits an enemy. So you can add a dot as you are sticking them in place. It just adds a little bit of extra damage as you are fighting. Now after we picked up Bone Cage, we're going to go for Essence Drain. Now, Essence Drain fires a projectile that applies a powerful chaos damage over time debuff to hit enemies. You want to use this one first and then use your Contagion on single target enemies until we get our main single target attack. For our Essence Drain, we went for Acceleration, which gives you 40% more projectile speed. It just allows it to travel a lot quicker. Now, when you're fighting at this point, as you'll see with the footage in the background, we'll actually be laying down our Contagion first and then running inside and hitting with Bone Cage. Now, Bone Cage will kill that first enemy and it will start bouncing the Contagion to other enemies and actually do a hell of a lot more damage. So you're going to want to hit the Contagion first and then spam Bone Cage to stick everyone in place and have the dot spread and tick as it goes up to 300% more damage. It can actually ramp up the damage on this pretty well, especially if you're using chaos damage abilities. If you start to put some chaos damage in the passive tree, this can actually ramp up quite to a significant amount. Not on a single target, because it actually doesn't do that much, but if you start using it on packs of mobs, it really does help out with your DPS. Now I'll put the video up in the background of a boss fight using this tactic with the Contagion and Essence Drain and spamming some Bone Cage. Then we'll move on to the last stage of the Act 1 leveling build.
Suffer and die! Electrify.
So after this, and we get a couple of levels at level 14, mainly while you're going to be in the mana, you're going to start to unlock Bone Storm. You'll get this unlocked at around about the mana ramparts, as you'll see in the background video. But Bone Storm is a massive single target damage, and it also does pretty decent AoE damage, although I don't like to use this. You'll have monsters at range and you'll have monsters in melee, and it kind of just goes and attacks through the first load. I like to run through the melee to the ranged, use my bone cage for clearing maps. So once you have Bone Storm unlocked, you're going to want to focus on 2 support skills. We're looking at Brutality, which gives you 35% more physical damage, but the skills deal no chaos or elemental damage, which these do not deal with anyway. This is only physical damage. And if you have Contagion up, your Bone Storm deals an extra 14 to 21 damage, really ramping that physical damage up. And you can fire up to 20 projectiles. As I showed you earlier, it actually brings up all of these and you fire it forward. The closer you are to a boss, the more damage it does, because all of these will be hitting the target itself, rather than if you're a little bit further away. If the hitbox is a little bit smaller, some of these will go around. So you want to get in close, you're going to let go, and then you're going to dodge roll out of it. As you'll see at the end of the video, when I do the final Act 1 boss fight, you'll see just how much damage the Bone Storm does. Even when I made a few mistakes with the dodge rolls, I was still able to come out victorious in quite a short amount of time. Now for the early game passive tree, there's not much to choose from. We're going to go up through the spell and minion damage, to spell and minion damage, all the way through on the left hand side of this until we get up to this point. Now at this point, we're first going to go over to the physical damage increase, further onto the physical damage jagged shards, and then up to spell and minion damage. Now at this point, you can pick up this if you wish to, the entropy, as it gives skill effect duration 15%, making your contagion last longer. Or not if you're just not going to use contagion and you're just going to stick with the bone spells. But I would recommend getting this, because it does up the damage of your Bone Storm. Now we're going to head up to these nodes here. Now with these nodes, you're going to want to pick intelligence so you have enough to be able to unlock your Bone Storm. This requires 34 intelligence. Once you have 34 intelligence, then this can be done with itemization, or it can be done with the actual nodes themselves. You're going to want to swap over to strength. We're using strength because we're stacking armor and we're stacking strength when I talk about the itemization in a second. Now we actually went over to a little detour over here to get 3% damage as recouped physical life. So 50% of the physical damage you take is recouped as your life. Pick this one first. We'll probably pick the elemental at some point, but because I'm up close and personal, I did this to allow us to have more survivability. Now, once we've finished Act 1, we will be ending at this node over here with a +5 strength. So at first, we're going to be heading over to the left, this direction, to grab these nodes over here and heading towards Cut to the Bone. It ups our physical damage and 10% chance to inflict bleeding on hit, with break armor also on your Bone Storms and your Bone Cages. And then after that, we'll head up north and we'll start going over to the left to grab these. But we also need to be up in this direction because we're going to start having to work on some curses, because we're going to be using our curses and making our ailments as an aura, but that's just for the future. Now for itemization, we're using our wands. We're using wands to up spell damage, and you're going to be wanting to look for gaining life per enemy killed, or you can change this out for a single-handed mace, which can up your physical damage. So you're going to be looking for increased physical damage. That will also help to ramp up your Bone Cage and Bone Storm DPS. Now I got this Wings of Kalen that actually dropped for me. I'm only using this for the +27 dexterity so I can put some support gems out there. You will be required to have some dexterity, so you might need to change out some of the nodes to unlock the support gems. Now we are using heavy armor. We're stocking up on armor as we're going to be up close and personal. We're going to be looking at getting resistances up and maximum life. Now we're doing this because you need to be ready for the end game, as there needs to be a lot of armor, there needs to be a lot of resistance, and there needs to be a lot of life. So if you get used to playing this way early, it's going to give you a much better time to play when you get to the end game, when you need to stack those defenses as well as DPS. You're mainly going to be wanting to look for maximum life, physical damage, movement speed, armor, and life regeneration. We're using the Rattling Scepter just as a little bit of a skeletal warrior tanking ability, but we'll probably get rid of that for a shield at some point later on anyway. If you can get resistances on gear, you should definitely do that and have whatever the best flask you have at the time. And that's what we have for the Act 1 build. I'm going to put up the last boss fight for you guys now so you can see that in all its glory. I will drop the updated guide when I complete the second act, and then I'll drop another one when we complete the third act, and then going into Cruel, I'll do it act by act over there. Depending on if there's any changes in the Cruel version, because you've got pretty much everything you'll need to grab once you get to Cruel. I might do a Cruel Act 1, 2, and 3 build guide as one way, and then we'll start working on the end game. I want to thank you all for watching. I hope you found this useful. Remember to subscribe to keep up with the builds. There will be a written guide in the description and a pinned comment for you guys over at Mobalytics. Fly safe and avoid local chat scams.
I'll remove your head myself!
Not if I take yours first.
Kneel! First one's eye. Run, little rabbit! Desolation. As night falls, winter's chill sought the unworthy through an endless night. They wither and tarry, forsaken thrusts. As cold as death, of Bale's misery, the pack won't forget. I will take out your heart!